Welcome. This is Policy to Practice, a podcast by the Center for Development Policy and Practice.
Here we invite experts to break down complex concepts for easy understanding.
This is your guest for today. Welcome to CDPP's podcast, Policy to Practice. Today we are joined by an urban geographer, a renowned urban geographer, and the founder of Hyderabad Urban Labs, Mr. Anant Maringanti. Hi sir, welcome.
Thank you.
Sir, first of all, we'll jump into the very basic question. Can you explain to me in simple terms geography and urban geography? And we'll start with the basic.
Well, the discipline of geography is essentially one that asks a very simple question.
Right.
Why does something happen in one place and not in another place?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yep.
Starting from there, your complexity of issues will slowly build out of there. But at the core of it is the question of space.
Yep.
And that space question can be understood in terms of location,
Right.
in terms of the place,
Yep.
which gets built over a period of time through many layers.
Mm-hmm.
It could be understood in terms of networks of places.
Right.
It could be understood in terms of hierarchy of scales.
Yeah.
So many different ways in which it can be done, many different kinds of questions that can be built. But ultimately it all comes down to this question of why do things happen in different ways in space.
Different locations.
So theorizing space
Yep.
is what
Yep.
we do.
Yep.
Therefore, we are a discipline that can actually quite legitimately, from our point of view,
Right.
poke our noses into everybody else's business. So if an economist says that this is how I'm explaining it, we can poke our nose into it and say, but you haven't thought about space or
Right.
place.
Right.
We can do the same thing to the sociologists and so on.
Yep.
The great thing about it is that I can just about do anything I want.
Dabble and all the space.
I can.
Yep.
The downside of it is that in the end it feels like there is really no own domain for me
Right.
to be specializing in anything.
Right.
And that's something that we keep struggling
And
with.
I was coming to that, sir. You have town planning and you have urban architecture or something like that. These are subjects that borrow the core essence of geography and are flourishing. But geography itself as a subject in higher education and research systems in India specifically, I've researched before doing this podcast with you, that there have been reduction in the number of departments in higher education in geography. So why is that happening, sir?
It's basically happening because so there are two aspects to any discipline, right? There is an applied aspect,
Yeah.
and there is a core fundamental questions that you ask from any discipline.
Yep.
And so there's economic theory and there's applied economics.
Yeah.
Right? There is a way in which you can reflect on the nature of this social world.
Yep.
Or you can give me advice on what to do with the social world.
Yes.
So in geography, all of those applied geography work
Right.
is appropriated by various professions.
Okay.
So what do planners do?
Ji.
You take a certain understanding of space
Right.
and turn that into the practical work of allocating resources to particular locations within a city.
Right.
Regulating how something should be done or
Right.
not done in a particular
Yep.
way in a particular city and so on and so forth. So that's what planners do.
Yeah.
It could be about the urban, it could also be about planning a region,
Yep.
it could be about planning an entire country, it could be anything.
Yeah.
But the core essential thinking about how to do those things,
Right.
that actually I don't know whether it is specific to the geography discipline. I think that in all disciplines, the ability or confidence in core fundamental theoretical thinking has gone down.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, which I think is that at this point of time, the world is transforming very rapidly.
Right.
In such a way that many of our fundamental beliefs about how the world works are breaking down.
Yeah.
So
and that applies to not just geography, but
applies
even
to all the disciplines.
fields.
It's just that in the case of geography, because your applied geography is appropriated by other disciplines.
Right.
The core is suffering like everybody else.
Yep.
So it looks like geography is suffering in a unique way.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a unique thing to geography itself.
Yep.
The issue actually is a very the heart of it is still a geography problem.
Right.
One of the most inspiring geography teachers in Neil Smith once described this in a very interesting way. He says that it's like sometime in the early 70s, a very willful child took the jigsaw puzzle of the world map and threw it up into the air. And the pieces came down.
Yeah.
The trouble is that the pieces that came down are not the same pieces that went up.
Oh my God.
Right. Now the challenge is, how do you put the pieces back together?
Yep.
Right. So the older understanding of the world being organized as countries with very clear boundaries is not working anymore.
Yep.
Because your internet is cutting across boundaries, your finances are cutting across boundaries. The way in which human bodies mobility is regulated has all changed. So suddenly we have a very different understanding of the world, but it's a world which has lost its balance.
And it's constantly changing.
So we need to
more in the last 100 years, I think, than ever.
Therefore, a lot of the disciplines now actually are at a point where they have to reinvent their core beliefs and theory. And that's what we're also doing.
Perfect, sir. Sir, do you think AI and technology, anything, it can be integrated into this science of geography?
Yes, it is something that actually makes a lot of difference to our discipline, basically because one of the biggest challenges in geography is the question of representation.
Right.
How do you represent data?
Okay.
In what ways, in what technology? So, for example, one of the recent projects that we've just completed, and it's still building further, just with this colleague and a partner, where we are working on modeling the thermal performance of housing.
Right.
Now, how do you do that? You have to take the remotely sensed data about temperature and humidity, which is done by spectral responses from satellite images.
Okay.
Those
thermal maps of red and...
Correct. Right. And so that gives you the land surface temperature.
Right.
Then you have... so this is all done by satellite imaging.
Right.
Then you have actually loggers set up in site, which are transmitting data on a moment-to-moment basis. So for the last several months, we have been collecting temperature and humidity data about houses, inside and outside the houses, every 2 minutes.
Okay.
In 40 locations.
Oh my God.
So we know how the walls get warmed up, how the roof heats up, how the room gets hot, all of that. And then we went ahead and actually did a very detailed measured drawings of all of these houses. And put all of this into a model. So now that model allows us to see what happens if you introduce one more body into the house. You can simulate that.
Okay.
Will the temperature change?
We
all know that congestion matters, but we don't know exactly how much.
By how much? Yes.
You can do that now. It's possible to say that, look, you have a cool roof policy. Where will cool roof policy make the most difference? Will it make a difference in a pakka house? Will it make a difference in a kacha house? Right. You can model all that. All of this is really difficult data crunching work. And new technologies have made a lot of it is very possible.
It has also opened up many avenues now. 10 years ago, nothing of this sort, I think, would be possible. So now let's focus a bit on Hyderabad. Is there any uniqueness, ecological uniqueness and richness of Hyderabad which is different from other metropolitan states, let's say, if we are comparing?
So one of the things that you have to remember that geography, like all other disciplines, is a discipline in which every geographer would locate himself or herself in a particular way.
Right.
So I cut the urban as a window.
Okay.
Now through that window, I'm looking at the whole world.
Right.
One of the reasons why we set up this thing called Hyderabad Urban Lab is precisely that.
Okay.
What happens if I theorize the world
Right.
from the standpoint of Hyderabad?
Right.
Will it look different?
Gee.
Right? As opposed to looking at the world from, let's say, Chicago
Yeah.
or from Frankfurt.
Right. Right.
The idea is that theory,
Gee.
concepts have a geography to themselves.
Right.
That
Okay.
there are certain kinds of questions that can be asked only from certain locations.
Right.
That there are certain assumptions that are possible only from certain locations, all of that.
Right.
So if you keep all of that in mind, is Hyderabad unique? Hyderabad is as unique as any other place.
Yeah. Because every place is unique.
Every
now.
place is unique,
Yeah.
right? Unique not in the sense of being so completely singular,
Right.
because then we'll have nothing to say to each other.
Yeah.
Because मैं जो कह रहा हूँ वो तो आपको समझ में भी नहीं आएगी, right?
हाँ जी.
We are saying at some level that you can learn from one place and
Right.
build concepts that can travel to other places.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's that specificity. So
Right.
what is that specificity?
Right.
The word that I would use actually is not uniqueness, the specificity.
Right.
What is the specificity of Hyderabad? Number one, ecologically, this is a city that has emerged on a particular stretch of the Deccan Plateau.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right now, Deccan Plateau is something that got formed about 2.5 billion years ago. It's older than the Himalayas.
Yeah. Damn.
Right.
Okay.
So the traces of human life here are very old.
Right.
You will see here stone menhirs. You will see here in this region
Right.
traces of life that was here long before the human beings.
Right.
You will see, if you go a little further up north,
Right.
the central Indian freshwater system that eventually
Right.
became land.
Yeah.
You can see traces of that.
Okay.
You will see in the last 10-15,000 years
Right.
the way in which human settlements slowly began to emerge, and so you will see all of that here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you will see the last 500 years in which settled agriculture really became a big thing under a particular type of political regime.
Right.
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 This is a region which was never really properly under the Mughal administration.
Yeah. I think only Aurangzeb was.
Aurangzeb came, and
Barely.
when Aurangzeb left, he left some people here
Yeah.
who never really were
From here. Deccan.
representatives
Yeah.
of the Mughals.
Mughals, yeah.
I mean, you go to the old city, you will see Mughalpura.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
That's it, literally.
Right? It's not like Hyderabad was a Mughal, part of a Mughal empire
Right.
that way.
Yeah.
So what do you have here? You have the Jain archaeological sites. You have
Right.
the transformations that happened since then.
Yeah.
And then you have the medieval kingdoms here. The fall of the Delhi Sultanate
Yeah.
leads to the Bahmanis, the Golconda, the Vijayanagara, the Ahmednagar, the Bijapur,
Right.
all these kingdoms,
Right.
which had a very different type of relationships amongst themselves, and they had nothing to do with the Mughals.
Yeah.
In fact, whether they were Muslims or Hindus,
Right.
they all were opposed to the Mughal invasions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so there's that history
Yeah.
of our composite culture,
Yeah.
multilingual culture
Right.
of the last 500-600 years.
Even Deccani as a language is so multilingual.
Correct.
It's a mixture of Telugu, Urdu,
Correct.
Marathi.
Yeah.
And that itself shows a lot.
Yeah, so you have that.
We have that. Yeah.
You have the infrastructure that is layered.
Right.
And then you have the very important recent history of a very rich princely state
Right.
that joins the Indian Union only in 1948.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It was never under the direct British rule.
Yeah. Nawab.
The British resident was here.
Right.
Right? And that meant that Hyderabad had a distinct trajectory of modernization.
Yep.
And it had its own railways, it had its own
Yeah.
reserve bank, it had its own telephone,
Right.
the postal department,
Right.
it had its own currency, all of that, right?
Yeah.
And a particular attitude towards education.
Yeah.
Now, this whole edifice that was constructed in the 19th century and the 20th century,
right,
that joins wholesale
right,
in the Indian Union
okay,
in 1948.
okay, right, right,
Unlike the many other places in India,
yeah,
where from the British presidency you directly move into the Indian Union.
okay,
Here, from a native ruled state, you are joining the
yeah,
Indian Union.
we were never under British rule.
Yeah, so that means that there is a particular type of sensibility, a particular kind of modernization project that emerges here,
right,
which leaves us with a number of institutions,
right,
which are very distinct to Hyderabad.
yep, yeah,
Usmania University, for example, in the 50s and 60s, was working very hard to put itself on the international map of scholarship.
right,
Right. Usmania University produced before 1948 a huge amount of work through the Urdu Translation Bureau.
right, okay.
So all of this
Yeah.
work that happened,
Yep.
and then figuring out how those things will connect into the modern Indian imagination.
Ji. Talking about the future now, what do you think is the future of geography, urban planning? Where is it all going?
I think whether the discipline itself will find a place of recognition or not is not such an important issue for me.
Right.
What is important is whether the tools of geography, the questions that we ask as geographers, whether they are of any use to policy.
Right.
And I think that if you look at it carefully, one of the big challenges of policy making, until very recently, things are changing a little bit now, is that most of your data in India was completely aspatial.
Right.
You had long lists with no latitude and longitude at all.
Okay. Okay.
Right. I mean, even after we started work, we go to the municipal corporation and ask them, where are your public toilets?
Right.
And they give me a long list.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where the toilet is located. Right. So we had an intern actually go around the city, locating those and putting them on a map.
Okay. Oh.
1,500 bus stops in Hyderabad. Nobody knows where they are located. Right. So we actually sent out people in buses to put pins on a map.
Yeah.
That situation has changed now. Now you have a lot of data. But with all of that data, do we have a new critical spatial or geographical imagination? Yes and no.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done to build a critical geographical sensibility. And by that, what I mean is that, for example, there's this idea which has shaped a lot of economic geographic thinking that I mean, to put it in a very terse manner, we say that this is believing that latitude matters to everything.
Right.
But basically that the physical location and its contours determine your future.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Which to us this basically means that this is a problem. Because that's not how the world works. There are all kinds of ways in which places change.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important for us to challenge these notions about the implicit notions about how places work.
Yeah.
And build in new geographical imaginations into our policy making.
Yeah. Yes. Perfect, sir. Thank you so much for your time.